I got it.
Okay, off to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're here to talk about haunted houses uh, with the time of year and with them starting to pop up, and talk about one, what is in the code related to haunted houses, but also, why is it important for us to address these, and why is it important for us to ensure that we are holding them to the code, and where they can't meet the code, we'll work on plan of correction to ensure that we're accounting for all the safety items in the code. First, I'll do a quick little rundown of our office for anybody that's new to working with us, or new to fire prevention North Dakota. So we're the office of the state fire marshal. Marcy, if you wouldn't mind clicking to the next one. Our office, we are underneath the insurance commissioner, who is John Godfried. I report to Chief Deputy Chief Deputy Insurance Commissioner John Arnold, who reports to John Godfried. Marcy works at the main office here with myself, and then we currently have 7 deputy fire marshals and 1 vacant position, so we're approved for 8. Are spread throughout the state on the map, as you can see there. Our actual vacant spots, we need to update our map a little bit. There is in the green northwest section is where we're still looking for a deputy fire marshal, and we do have one in the Devil's Lake area now that we don't have pinpointed on that map. So we have 7 out of our 8 deputy fire marshal positions filled. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of them, and when you need help with fire prevention. Our main role at our office is assistance to the fire departments. Where we focus most heavily on that, especially our deputy fire marshals, are through fire origin and cause investigations. Those are at the request of the local fire department is when we go out. We do fire inspections, both century code required for our office to complete, such as state buildings and schools. And also we do fire inspections at request of the local jurisdiction as well. So if you're a local fire chief or fire marshal that has a difficult inspection, or something that you haven't run across before, or a complaint that comes in that you need help with, or a second set of eyes, that's what we're there for, is to help back up that fire department with the code and make sure they have the correct interpretation and application of it. Similarly, with plan review, we would legislatively review anything regarding a school or a state building that gets submitted to us. And then by request, in any fire protection systems that come in, also tanks and LP tanks, we would review as well. Public education is kind of those big 4, kind of one of them that we probably get the least amount of time to really focus on or get our deputies involved with much. What we try to do out of our office for public education are events like this, and we lean on Marcy Ost, who will have a section of this presentation here later today, to do community risk reduction, where we kind of look at ourselves and fitting into the community risk reduction role for fire departments in North Dakota is really hopefully just kind of that hub spoke for information to be able to get things out to the local fire departments for them to be able to respond accordingly in their own communities. Further about our role, we are charged to adopt state fire rules. So we do adopt a state fire code. We're currently on the adopted and amended version of the 2021 International Fire Code. Again, investigations, prevention of fires, combustibles, explosives, fire protection systems, a number of other things. On fire and explosion origin and cause investigations. Again, this is at the request of the fire chiefs and local fire marshals. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, even if it's something that maybe you think you know the cause of, but you just don't think it's the right place for your own department to be doing the origin and cause, that's where we want to be able to come in and help, where it can help that fire department being a neutral third party, or with something complex that you're not aware of, or something incendiary. We work with our statewide and federal law enforcement partners regularly, so we can bring in a whole team to help investigate when needed. A little bit more on inspections and code enforcement. We do adopt the fire code as mentioned earlier. We do both legislatively assigned inspections and those that are requested. Same thing on plan review. Our deputies stay very busy with those and are continually working on one of those three things: investigations, inspections, or plan review. We always have a full load of, so please keep calling whenever you need help with any of those things. As we mentioned, our biggest focus on community risk reduction is, or on public education, is community risk reduction. We are doing that through a number of different initiatives, this being one of them, the Lunch and Learns, where we just try to find different ways to get more information out to the local fire districts to try to help in their role of preventing fires in their communities. Among and within community risk reduction kind of fits our special programs, or the programs that we kind of do out of the main office, which is just Marcy and myself working on most of these. But we kind of include a lot of that in with community risk reduction. But further within that is fire reporting, the certificate of existence program, where fire departments submit information to our office for review each year so that we can kind of keep an eye on who the fire departments are, and then they get access to the insurance distribution dollars with at the state. We have a number of other programs. One of them also Fire Safer Cigarettes. Every cigarette sold in North Dakota is required to be registered as a Fire Safer cigarette with our office. So if you ever run into something that is not marked as FSC on or near the label, please contact us for further questions, and we can definitely look those up and check to see if they are registered and marked correctly. So today's topic, what we're here to talk about, it is October 3rd, very much well into the spooky season. So we're talking about temporary haunted houses. So essentially what these are is a change of occupancy. And I think you'll probably hear that a couple times here between myself and Caitlin, who will be up next. And if it's a temporary deal coming in, these are their own special occupancy within the building code. And if somebody's going to pop one of these up, they need to consider certain safety aspects. So if we look back in history, luckily we don't have a lot of these as far as terrible incidents in the past, but one of them that sparked a lot of the safety initiatives that we see nowadays in haunted houses within the codes was May 11th, 1984, the haunted castle at Six Flags in New Jersey. There were 8 deaths and 7 injuries. So after the investigation, it was revealed that the castle essentially had combustible materials and contents, including foam on the walls, which helped spread the fire. It was a temporary type structure that was essentially 8 semi-trailers that were all connected and put together, and they used light wood frame to build the walls and the interior and doorways, and have kind of a meandering entrance and exit throughout. So they didn't have any sprinklers, they didn't have any smoke detectors or fire alarms. The exit distance was approximately 450 feet and not marked or lighted appropriately. So they had a number of issues with this place. They did have warnings before, and this was a place that was, they designed it as this. They didn't do anything to correct those safety warnings, and sadly had a tragedy on their hands. I did include a link for NFPA.org that has articles and blogs on this event if you want to look further into it. Just real quickly, a couple of pictures from the aftermath of it. As you can see, the fire completely tore through all of the trailers that were connected throughout this haunted castle. There are multiple injuries, 8 fatalities, like I said, just a few before and after photos. One thing to note is I want to credit National Fire Protection Association with the photos. I did take these from one of their articles just to share with this, and have requested permission to use it in this presentation, but haven't necessarily finally received it yet. So I hope I don't have to take these down shortly, but good photos that show the devastation of how fastly these fires can go through, especially when you have the wrong materials in them. So the big things that they found were the detection and suppression systems weren't there. Exits, they're obscured and non-compliant, which, as you know, in a haunted house is oftentimes what they intend to do is to obscure the exits to make that thrill higher and confuse people. So we're intentionally making people confused, hiding those exits. This is inherent safety risk. That is why that detection and suppression are so necessary. And then they found also highly flammable building materials help spread that fire extremely fast in this situation. So why is this an issue in North Dakota? If you drive around North Dakota, you will see in some of the towns and cities that we have many vacant homes and buildings. There are old churches that are vacant and lend themselves readily for communities to look for uses for them or to identify how they can still be useful to the community or a positive in the community. So we have old buildings. We have a time of year when people are looking for old buildings that could be fit to be used for something else. And that gets us in this situation where we have haunted houses that pop up for that temporary time around the state. One thing that I want to make sure we clarify on this Lunch and Learn is we do not recommend allowing any unapproved change or use of occupancy without full compliance of the fire code. However, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some of those key safety items that you want to make sure that you account for if you're going to have one of these in your community. Again, we don't recommend allowing anything that is not completely up to code. However, we do understand that communities and fire chiefs face different pressures, timelines, et cetera, for temporary use of buildings. So we want to make sure we give you the tools to do that as safely and effectively as we can in your community. So if the building was designed to be a special amusement area, we want to make sure you understand what the state and local building codes are and require of special amusement buildings. If the building that you have in your community is not specifically designed as a special amusement area, we want to make sure you know exactly what the requirements are so you can account for those in either a plan of correction or document it or ensure that you have the owners that are trained up on this and know what the risks are, the hazards are. And then the last thing that we'll get to later today is insurance. Do they have insurance, and do they have they notified their insurance of the use of the structure for that? So with that, I would like to introduce our Deputy Fire Marshal out of the Dickinson area, Kaylin Lucas. She did a blog on this information here, I believe last week that we posted that. And so she's been looking into this for a good month here and is ready to report on what types of things you need to look at if you are a local jurisdiction that has a temporary Halloween haunted house popping up in your jurisdiction. Kaylin, if you're ready, you can go ahead and take it from there.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Doug said, this is something that we're going to see every season. There are a group of people out there that do enjoy being scared for the sake of being scared, but we do want to make sure that their life and safety are not hindered in any way while they go and do the activities. Per fire code of the 2021 edition, temporary or permanent structures do require sprinklers and fire alarms. If you're we're not saying that you're allowed to accept anything less than that code, but if you are in a small rural area and you do realize these are going to happen no matter what, then the following couple of slides will give you at least the minimum code requirements that will allow for safety of all the occupants that go through the systems. That way you can account for anything, document, make sure everything is covered to a degree that you feel comfortable with if you're not doing a sprinkler fire alarm. I do want to make note that the International Building Code, section 411, does have a specific special amusement areas that is all laid out as well. They do discuss occupant load, exits, lighting, anything like that, plus the sprinkler and fire alarm system as well. So some of the few minimum requirements, Chapter 3 is general. You have the clearance between your ignition sources and combustible materials. That could be anything from your candles or luminaires or heaters or flame producing devices. If you are having them, there is a good clearance to make sure that there are no accidental ignitions. On that, it falls right into a group A occupancy is not allowed an open flame like a candle or a lantern unless it meets certain criteria, which is a very sturdy base, absolute protectant of the flame from any of the combustible materials. Pretty much a good safe bet would be absolutely no open flame. That would help you. Chapter 4 is emergency planning and preparedness. This kind of falls under the line of having a fire watch, having evacuation plans, having fire safety plans. The fire watch allows for a person or persons, depending on the size of your events, to strictly have duties that are to be looking out, monitoring all the spaces, all the situations, diligent to keep all the egresses clear, make sure nothing's blocked. If a hazard does arise, they're able to promptly go into action and evacuate any of the occupants that are within them, or potentially utilize a fire extinguisher to suppress any fire that may break out. Fire safety plans fall in line with the evacuation plans, which is, having procedures, how you notify your occupants, how you alert anybody of a hazard if it has happened, the location of all your exits, the location of all your fire extinguishers. Those are good plans to have in place for any activity, but especially during one that will be setting out to disorient all your occupants. Chapter 6 would be a basic building service and system coverage. You just want to make sure that all your unsafe electrical conditions are abated, so no damaged or modified wiring, devices, equipment, appliances. Anything that can constitute an electric shock or a fire hazard should be prohibited and not allowed. And working space and clearances, just keep those panels and fuse boxes cleared, so if you do need to access them, you're able to in a timely manner. Relocatable power taps, UL listing of a 1363, should be put directly into a receptacle, not used in a series with an extension cord, just used appropriately. And all extension cords should not be a substitution for permanent wiring. And everything else should also be taken into consideration. You don't want to subject that cord to environmental damage, to foot traffic. You don't want it stapled or pinned to the walls or through doorways, anything that could cause it to become damaged. Next slide. Interior finish of Chapter 8. This is some of the stuff that will definitely be brought in and not monitored. I believe would be a huge thing to make sure you pay attention to. You always will have furnishings, decorations, you'll have curtains, draperies, fabrics. Any material that is used should not be made of explosives or highly flammable characteristics. They should comply with NFPA 701, ASTM E84 or UL 723 listings, as those three listings are the flame propagation performance criteria, and that is what the code would like all materials to work with. Interior finish also has a restriction on not exceeding 10% of any specific wall or ceiling area. That also helps with flame propagation. Chapter 9 is your fire protection life safety systems. It requires the fire alarm, the sprinkler, fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers are required to be on every level and within 70 foot of travel. Your fire alarm is the notification, audible and visible for all your occupants. It also will activate if it will go off if your sprinkler head activates or if any detectors activate. The sprinkler system throughout. There is a caveat to the sprinkler system that if a temporary special amusement area is less than 1,000 feet and the exit travel from any point is less than 50 feet, no sprinkler is required. I don't know of any special amusement areas that are that small, but that is an exception that the IFC does allow. Chapter 10, be the means of egress. This is very important. Once you have people in a building, you need to get all those people out of the building. Just like with the case study that Doug Nelson talked about, if you can't evacuate, you can't safely get them out, it's going to be a bad deal. Means of egress should be illuminated at all times, especially if it's occupied. When people are going through, they need to be able to see that there are exits with a proper signage, proper lighting of the signage, visibility of it. The whole egress pathway should be also have readily available and visible exit signs that allow you to go down that travel to get to the exit. Exits are not to be blocked or obstructed. You should be able to clearly see the exit sign and see the exit door. It also needs to be a continuous path from the exit to the discharge, and no reduction of that space should happen either. And all doors need to comply with the applicable requirements. Chapter 31, it's tents and temporary special structures. The materials also on any tents or membrane structures, just like with your fabrics, need to meet a flame propagation performance criteria in order to be used. Also, these are definitely more of a temporary pop-up takedown situation. So all of these tents and special structures should be inspected, and all deficiencies should be corrected prior to occupying the space.
Okay, thank you, Kaylin. I am going to go from here, and I'm just quick gonna turn on my camera to say hi. Thanks for everybody for coming, and we appreciate you signing up and showing up. I'm gonna shut my camera off though, because you'd be looking at the side of my head, and that's boring. So I've only got a couple of things for you. The first thing we're looking at here is a graph of variable use amusement incidents in North Dakota over the last 10 years. I started to look at 5 years, but as you can see, it jumped really dramatically in there. So I kept going backwards to see what the trend looked like. So it jumped really dramatically from 20 to 21, and it's kind of leveled out at that high level. Excuse me. Those are all incidents. So everything that you get called to at a 120 or a 129. And the orange line down there at the bottom is fires in those situations. I didn't find any that are specifically to haunted houses, but I think it's still of a concern, and haunted houses scare me, so here we are. The next thing I wanted to show you is there are a few resources between NFPA and USFA. They have Halloween themed things. This should have that open here for you. So this is what NFPA's Halloween themed page looks like. They've got a few tips, and they do have some downloadable things out there. All I did to find this, every time I've found it, I've had to go up to the search bar and search Halloween because NFPA stuff is dense. USFA doesn't have a ton. Most of their stuff is based on the idea of candle fire safety. But if you scroll down to the bottom of their candle fire safety page, they do have a couple of infographics for specific to Halloween. The State Fire Marshal's Office has populated their social media calendar for the rest of the month. And for next week, we have lots of stuff on Fire Prevention Week. But after that, we go into social media suggestions for Halloween. So there's that available. Something else that we just discovered is this. This is a web page of North Dakota haunted houses. So if you're not sure if you have one in your area, or if you're concerned that you don't know about all of them, you can search by the area. You can search by city or county or however you want to. So let's just take, well, we know what Mandad, but I know what Mandad says. Leonard, I found, this is what got me looking. Leonard has this Acres of Terror, and I've heard of it, but even the small towns have them. So there's a lot out there for those kinds of things. Eventually, we will be turning, I shouldn't say eventually, shortly, we will be turning this information, I can't make that thing go away, into tip sheets. Fine, I'll do it this way. So if you have not been to our website, this is what the homepage looks like. If you go to resources up here and just click on the resources button, you'll find the videos of our lunch and learns. There's fact sheets out here. There's a couple of them right now. We have several in the works, so there will be more. Erin from Southern Valley created these comics, so those are all out there. So there's a good resource for you. And like I said, there will be a fact sheet for Halloween. I'm sorry, not Halloween, for haunted houses specifically, and the video of this lunch and learn will be there eventually. So if you ever need to backtrack, there's a few other things under resources, but on the community risk reduction page is where we're keeping our calendars updated. And if you're not attending our CR community risk reduction kitchen table meetings and you're curious, there's recordings of the last couple we've done there. So lots of information out there. Other North Dakota Sierra programs are out there too. And that is the extent of what I had to tell you. So I'm going to turn it over to Blaine. Blaine is the Property and Casualty Division Director for the Insurance Department. Am I saying that all right, Blaine?
You
I
are,
almost stumbled over
yes.
your title. Okay. All right.
Yes, thank you, Marcy. Yeah, so my name is Blaine and I am the Property and Casualty Division Director here at the department. I've been in insurance industry for about 17 years, so quite a while. And I've held numerous positions and titles in the industry, agency. A good part of it was as a commercial underwriter. So I've spent a lot of time with risk reduction, emergency preparedness as an underwriter. Those are very important to me. And so I've had the pleasure of working with the fire marshal's department on various issues and topics like this one. So I just wanted to give a general overview of insurance. I know in my experience in being involved in different organizations or groups that are wanting to put these on, they're usually kind of last minute. You know, there's an idea like we should do something, we should have a haunted house or a hayride, and insurance and that type of thing and emergencies can be overlooked sometimes. So it's kind of a quick, we should do it, let's do it, and then they think about it after it. And so we'll just kind of go over a few different things of who needs this type of insurance. Obviously, you know, haunted houses, but this could be also just gatherings or events where you're going to have games for kids or adults. They're often held in just a community room or some space where you set up a bunch of different things for kids to do, games and things like that. They would need coverage. Haunted hay rides, corn mazes, escape rooms, pumpkin patches, and zombie runs. Zombie runs, I had to kind of look at what that is. It's more of a newer thing that I've found out, where it's a marathon type run where people dress up as zombies and chase people. So it would definitely need some kind of coverage there too if you're going to organize something like that. I have not seen one of those, but these are just the type of things that would need some sort of coverage to be in place. So the number one thing that people would need would be the first one, which would be general liability insurance. So that's the number one event insurance, like a single event, special event insurance, where you would have coverage for any type of accident that would happen. So if anyone is approaching you guys and asking, you know, about doing this, or, you know, a general thing to ask them, or like, have you looked at general liability coverage for this event? That would be the number one thing. And the ones below it would all be add-ons or a package deal with the general liability insurance. So the third party coverage would be for any damage to anything that someone is coming to these events, and if anyone is held negligible and they damage their own property, you would have coverage for that. Commercial property insurance would be one or two if the person is indeed holding it at their business or their property, they would need, specific coverage for that. Or if someone is in someone else's property or business, different types of coverage to cover if they damage the actual structure. Auto, liquor, and umbrella, those are a little more extensive depending on the size of the event. If someone is, driving automobiles around to bring materials or anything like that, you would want to have auto coverage. Liquor, pretty self-explanatory. If you're selling liquor, then someone would need to have that. And umbrella is just covering all of those bases with giving more coverage to each one of those lines of business. So those are the basic types of what these people would need, with general liability being the number one. And then, so the next one, the big problem with, as an underwriter, we would get calls a lot of times as saying, we have a client from an agent, typically saying we have a client that wants to do one of these, haunted house or hayride or anything of that nature. And we would start asking these questions. And a lot of times it's not prepared or they don't know. And that's what takes a lot of time and makes it more difficult to secure the coverage, or makes people kind of not want to make that call because they have to go through a lot of hoops. So if someone is approaching you guys and asking any of these questions, telling them what to have ready before they make the call generally makes it a quick process. So the big one is the size. So if someone is putting on a haunted house, if they have an estimated number of how many people are going to be there, and that's like the estimated attendance, number of tickets printed. Sometimes they don't print tickets, but gross receipts and payroll, a lot of these are volunteer. They might not have that, but they're basically, all four of those are trying to gauge the size. So if they can even, we're going to have 50 kids or 100 kids, or, if they have some kind of numbers in line of what they think is going to be there. And then depending on the size, the top one, the copies of fire marshal inspections, companies aren't going to request that unless it's a very large size. So if you have a large payroll of hired employees, a lot of tickets printed, they might require a fire, an inspection of some kind. First aid is a big one. So that's a big question that's asked. I mean, so they would ask, do they intend to have any medical there, first aid? And, usually the answer is like, well, I don't know. I don't know if anyone will be there. But if they have that prior, then that's going to help them show that they have thought of this at least, and that will help. And then closest medical facility, if they have that information prior to calling, that's going to help. And then what is going to take place? So what are the risks that are involved? We're going to have open flames or trapdoors, lights. Jump scares is the biggest one that they see if people are jumping out and scaring people. And they just want to see what is going to happen at the event, and then what have they done to minimize the risk of these things. So basically just having all the information before you make that contact to an insurance agent or a company is really going to speed the process up, because once they have that, they can usually issue a policy on site. So those are just a few basic things. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can definitely go into the weeds. There's a lot more that can be discussed about insurance on this side, but just wanted to just give a few pointers on it. So.
Thank you, Blaine. Okay, so that's the end of the formal presentation. I wanted to open it up for any questions, or if anybody had anything to add. Unfortunately, I always forget to mention this. This is a webinar, so if you want to come off mute, I will start working on doing that, but you might have to raise your hand or put it in the chat while I'm doing that, giving you all access. Doug, did you have something you wanted to add while I'm doing that?
No, I'll just wait. Any questions? It's like Ian has one.
Hi, and I'm coming. Here we go. Hey, you should have your camera and your mic available to you.
Thanks for the information. I'm just checking. So a lot of this stuff covered like assemblies in different places, talking about buildings and structures. Is there any difference between 1 and 2 family homes when they operate them out of their house? Do we fall under any different codes, or is it all still the same?
That's a great question.
He's not asking me, is he?
Whoever's got an answer.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if I have an answer to that. Kaylin, do you have any idea of how we would look at that or try to, I think when you have it in your private home, obviously, as we all know from enforcing fire codes, sometimes we're a little stuck as far as the commercial building versus the private single family residence. So not sure how easily it'd be for us to necessarily just enforce code on a single family home that's doing that. But that's where hopefully, you can give them those guidance of what is required in commercial building doing this or commercial operation doing this, and also point them. That's one thing that I hope we're able to add to this lunch and learn is a little bit of the other side of things, the insurance side of things too, of ensure that people get the correct insurance and keep their insurance updated for what they're doing in their own home too. So I guess my answer would be, I think it'd be difficult to enforce code in a single family dwelling. Yeah, even if they're opening it up to, public and neighbors. However, I think it's still, if you know that in your community, I don't think it's a bad idea to let them know that there are safety hazards that are related to it.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
Good question.
We've had a house that's done it, I'm sure you're aware of, several years here. And I heard through my kids just yesterday that they were looking at doing it again. So that's kind of what I want to know, how much we can enforce or educate.
I think I would lean into the education probably with the single family home. So good question.
Okay. Thank you.
And Andrew, you're have your control of your mic if you want to come off mute.
Yes, good afternoon. Two-part question for me here. Number one being, the haunted house that we have in our small town is actually held at a pavilion owned by the city. So in the case like that, who would need to purchase that insurance? Would it be the person putting it on or the city because it's their building?
So it could go actually both ways. So I mean, that was kind of more in the weeds too, as far as like additional insureds. If the city wants, whoever owns the property, it's probably easiest to purchase it. But when I say easiest, just because they own the property, they have insurable interest in it. But I mean, if it'd be an agreement between both parties, the other party who's running the haunted house could also secure the coverage and add the city or the property as an additional insured on the policy. So it can, it can definitely go both ways, just depending on the relationship between both parties. They just want to make sure that if it's the party that doesn't own the property, they just want to make sure they have that third party coverage or property coverage on the policy. And then, list the owner as an additional insured on the policy too.
Okay, sub question to that right there. Also, would that be considered a commercial property or would that be better suited for third party?
If it's like a pavilion, something like that, probably a commercial, they'd probably look at it as a commercial property. But there might be some flexibility in that as far as how they set it up. They might have to do the commercial policy, but it really depends on each individual property is how they look at it. But
Okay. And my second overall question would be, if there is no sprinklers in a building like that, would it be recommended to have maybe a couple of volunteer firefighters on standby, just hanging out at the hall? I mean, it's right next to them. Just would that suffice in the eyes of, say, the fire marshal's office or something? If something did happen, would that be an adequate measure in your eyes?
So I hate to give any guidance outside of the fire code, so I hesitate to give you a yes or no on that. I guess what I would try to say is, if it's something that your community is doing and you as a fire chief need to put your best foot forward. I think I would just say, however you can account for it to ensure that they're addressing that. If it's something that's not going to be, or not, I don't want to say practical, but if it's something that's not going to happen as far as meeting the code and sprinkler in that building, I would say it's a discussion between you and that building owner, you as the local jurisdiction having authority, and them as hosting the event of what level of safety they need. I think another thing, it depends on, how large is it, because if it's a small building, if it's under 1,000 square feet, then that's an exception to the sprinkler system. If it's 1,500 square feet, well, maybe that's pretty reasonable. If it's a 10,000 square foot building, I don't know, maybe that's not reasonable. I think it's hard to answer that as a black and white yes or no. I think I'd kind of lean into it's got to be your local judgment call as far as what's acceptable for the level of risk that you're seeing with your situation.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you. And Andrew, if you want to reach out and talk some more, don't hesitate, okay?
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Dawn? You still there?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, I was just gonna, I think it was it Ian? Regarding this, using the single family home.
Yep.
I think like in the city of Fargo, with the land development code, you run into planning and zoning issues. So in Fargo, we have special events that occasionally would allow, it's a permitting process that goes through the city where planning has to sign off on it, engineering, fire, inspections, everybody. I'm not saying that would be allowed here, but I'm just saying a resource might be, it might be a violation of a city ordinance based on planning and zoning to have it in a single family home.
Good call.
So that might be a resource for you, but that's all I had.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, thoughts? Something we want to throw out there? I think you should all have access to your mic if you want to. No? Okay. I'm gonna give you back the rest of your lunch hour. Again, this will be posted on the website. Jacob's out of the office the rest of the week, but he's pretty fast about getting these things taken care of, so I expect it to be up there pretty early next week. And if you have any, oh, yes, Doug?
I just want to jump in before you close it
Yeah.
out and just say thanks, Kaylin, for putting together the code slides. Marcy, thank you for coordinating and organizing this information and scheduling these lunch and learns. And Blaine, I really want to say thanks for being a part of this, because I think that brings a whole different angle that is hopefully another resource for our local fire departments and fire chiefs out there and fire marshals out there to work with in their local community. So I hope that's what we are bringing. But as always, please let us know if you have comments, questions, concerns, need further assistance, or if you need anything else on these lunch and learns. We are open and trying to listen and provide what we can. So just want to say thanks for everybody within the insurance department for jumping on and making this happen. Thank you all for the time and attending. We appreciate it. And back to you, Marcy. Thanks.
I'll let you guys go. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your attendance, and I do appreciate everybody that jumped in and helped make it happen.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.